I did have to start it to let you come into the meeting. Just coming up to our start time now, so just another 5 minutes or so. If there's anyone wondering about the silence, we've just started the meeting a tiny bit early just to make sure we've got all our parties in here. So we'll be getting started fairly promptly at our set start time. All right, that's our set start time. We might just about give it a minute and see if we've got any last remaining people coming into that meeting right before we get started. All right, just giving a slight moment at the start here to let the last few people join into our webinar today. So um, we'll be getting started in just a moment. All right, that's sort of 2 minutes past our start time, so we might get cracking with our webinar today. So welcome everyone to the webinar. The topic for today is to go over some of the new features and enhancements that we have released into the student management system recently. And if I haven't had the opportunity to meet you before, my name is Hayley Zeinstra, and I'm the Customer Success Manager here at eSkilled. All right, so let's dive in. And in this session today, we'll be aiming basically to provide some practical insights to some of the recently released system features and enhancements. So hopefully you have a really good understanding of those once, once we've finished the session. And just to run through what those items are that we'll be covering off today. Firstly, we'll be going through digital document signing, and that's for a letter of offer or for training plans. We'll cover off elective unit selection, where you can give flexibility to students to choose which electives they would like to study. We'll cover off a new payment plan rule that was introduced, where you can invoice a student at at unit completion. So when they've finished their unit, that would be when the invoice is triggered. We'll cover how you can allow a user to have multiple roles. So that might be as a student, as an administrator, and as a trainer. And also a neat feature with having a main and an alternative student email address and some of the contact preferences that you can enable between those as well. So that's what we've got on the menu for today's webinar. All right. So first of all, we'll cover off document signing, and as I mentioned, that's in regards to either a letter of offer or trading plans. So with document signing, this is a feature that does need to be enabled on your account, so it's not a standard feature. So if you finish the meeting today and want to run around and have a look at it, you may see that these functions aren't necessarily turned on yet. So just reach out to our support team if you need some help with that. With these documents, we have base templates that are available. And we can also customize these by request. So just to keep that in mind, you do have the ability to create these yourself in your account, but we do have those base templates to help get you started as well. And then in terms of keeping track of these documents that you need to have signatures on, we have an agreements report, and that will help you to keep track of documents. Particularly, it will provide visibility on any unsigned documents. So we'll introduce where you can find that in the system as well. Now, in regards to document signing, these are sort of the flow of how that works. So first of all, there is some setup that you would need to do in your account in regards to your document templates, and then applying these to your program instances as well. Once the setup is there, admin can publish a document for signature. And when admin do that, an email notification would be sent to all the required parties. And that email notification also does contain a direct link, so they can click on that and straight away go to the form which they need to sign. If it is a user who has a login, so that would be a student logging into their student portal, or if that is someone working at a company who has access to company portal, they can also view and sign documents by logging into their account as well. And then when all parties have signed the relevant document, there is an email notification which is triggered at that stage as well, and that will send a copy of the signed document to all of the parties who have signed that via email. And again, for those parties that do have access to a portal, they'll be able to see that signed document in the portal as well. So as a quick overview, that's sort of the crux of the functionality here. Now, an important feature, I think, is that we do make it very easy to obtain a third-party signature. So you can generate an external party link, and it's easy to share that, and then also record a digital signature from that third party. So that's, I think, a terrific feature because it can be very difficult to get those third parties, the particular piece of paper that they need to sign, and then to also obtain that back from that particular third party person. So being able to do that with an easy to share link is just a nice, easy way to keep things moving along. All right, so let's dive into the system and let's have a look at that in practice. I'm just going to close the presentation, and if we're lucky, that will just go straight to our eSkilled system there. So sort of going back to the start of that spiel that I've just given, the first point here would be navigating into your templates and then selecting the Document Templates tab. So this is where you will essentially set up those templates that you want to use for your training plans or for a letter of offer. If you already have them that exist in the system, they'll be here in the table. For example, you can see here we've got a letter of offer. If you need to create a new one though, and you don't have anything in this table already, then you would be clicking the new button in the left corner here. You'll want to give that document a description and use the drop down here to select what type of document that is. So training plan and the state that it's relevant for, or a letter of offer, since in this example we're talking about the documents that have signature capability. Excellent. So I'll give a quick example here of what it will look like in template stage. I think it's important to know that if you create one from scratch, and maybe I'll just do that now very quickly, and yes, maybe Haley test is fine. And maybe if we just pick a letter of offer, since that's the top one, and we create that straight away, that's successfully done my my template there. So we'll be able to scroll down the bottom and find that in the end of our list. If we click the action button, this is where you can see the specific details of that template, and the edit report is where you can see what the template itself looks like. Now this is going to be blank. So if you're interested in building it yourself, you've certainly got the capability to do that here in the editing suite. But like I mentioned as well, we do have some base templates we can populate into your system for you so that you're not starting from an absolute blank page. And we do also have the ability to support you in customizing these documents as well. So I'm just going to flick back to page 1, and I'm going to go back to our letter of offer that I pointed out and look at that one just because that one does have some information in the template, so you can get a little flavour of what it might look like. when you've built something into that template. And if we scroll to the last page of this document, this is where there's a table recording the signatures of various people and roles against that letter of offer. So this is what it looks like in template view. At this stage, obviously, you don't have, clickable sections to put in names and signatures and such. But the little tags there with the 2 stars and the particular tag will translate to that when we see it from the user end. So this is just looking at it from the template and the setup side of things. All right. Now, what we won't unfortunately be doing in this particular session, just because we don't really have the time to do it, is go through every single little step of the setup here for the document signing. Let's jump to the exciting part though, when all the setup has been done. And that's obviously where you are ready to create a document and send it to a student or other parties for signature. So in this example, I'm going to navigate to a student profile. So let's go and visit our students menu. And there is someone who I prepared earlier. I'm just going to search for that particular example person and bring them up. In your day-to-day though, as an RTO or as a training organisation, this might look a bit different. So rather than searching for a particular individual, perhaps you're looking through new applications via the reports function and looking for any new enrolments or any enrolments that meet the category or the requirements to be issuing the documents to them. Once you've got a profile open though, what you'll want to do is click on the Enrolments tab, because these documents are issued in relation to a particular enrolment. Now, if your enrolment does have a training plan set up to use with it, you'll need to click the Action button. And in the Action button, you've got various options. One of those is Training Plan, and you'll be able to push that out for signature to the student by following through there. I'm going to use the letter of offer as my example. So slightly different user interface for that one. We'll just click the button to issue a letter of offer, and it will show us any of those enrolments that are eligible to issue a letter of offer for. So we'll select one and click the button here that we do want to publish that for signing. Are we sure? Yes, I am. Let's go through, and that's all done. So through that process I discussed earlier, at this point, this has triggered that email to go out to the student and any other parties whose signature may have been required on that document. And so that's been sent out ready for a signature. We can see that to double check in the user interface whether that was successful. You'll probably see this red notification on the Agreements tab. So we can go ahead and click on that. And this is where, from an administrator point of view, we can see any agreements or documents that are requiring a signature against that particular student. So there's sort of a summary table there, and it's possible, there might be a letter of offer and a training plan, or there might be multiple enrolments and multiple training plans. So just to keep that in mind. If we click on the Action button, this is where we get that nifty link where we can send that to an external party. So we can go ahead and click on that. And that's going to copy the link to the clipboard ready to paste into whatever location you need to share that via. As an example, let's go ahead and actually it might be useful if we look at the document first. So to sign the document, you'll just be clicking the little icon here in the sign column. And this displays the document in its signable form. So similar to what we saw in the template form, except when we come to the bottom, you can see these still do display as tags because we are not the third party and we are not the student, so we don't need to sign in those categories. But we are the client in this scenario, so it will let us populate a name a signature and a date there as well. The date is pre-filled and that will pre-fill with the date of that current day, so that it is accurate for the exact day that that was signed against. So very simple. You can see that's pre-filling for me. Otherwise, you can just type your name into the box there. Clicking on the signature box will bring up a pop-up. So you can either draw a signature in there or there is a facility to upload a digital signature as well. So nice and simple. Once you've done that, you just simply click on submit to sign your life away and to agree to the documentation that's been sent through. Now you'll note here in this example that the third party is a parent or guardian. And so in that sense, what we can do from an administrative perspective is we would grab that external party link, and then we would probably be opening up some kind of correspondence to our parents and guardians. And then you might have a template ready to go out to use for this scenario, and where all you need to do is customize the link that you're plopping into that particular piece of correspondence. So nice and easy to easily request a third-party signature. And in fact, if we actually want to follow that link, if I can open a new tab. You can see what that would look like for your third party. They'll be scrolling down here, and this time the parent and guardian category is the one that's activated and ready to record signatures in. Terrific. Once all parties have signed, as I said, that's at the point where there would be another email notification to everyone with the signed copy so that the documentation is recorded and shared to everyone who has signed. And I guess it's probably good at this point to have a look at this from a student perspective as well. So let's go ahead and log in as the student because it will be a slightly different experience for them. Let me just grab my student's pretend email address and we'll go in and have a look from the student end what that document signing would look like if they did choose to log into their student portal. And you may have just seen that pop up here in their navigation panel, but there is a agreements menu item for them in the student portal, and clicking on that, it's just loading up. There you go. It's a very similar view to what you have from the administrator side of things. They would also click that sign little icon to access the document and then pull through to the end of that document where they'll be able to record their name, signature, and have that date pre-filled for them as well. So nice and easy experience, and nice that they can also grab that from a direct link on email. They don't have to log in to sign it, but if they did want to go back, for example, and be able to find the signed copy and they don't keep their emails and they delete things, then it's also recorded in that portal for them to go back to in the future as well. Lovely. All right. That is everything. Actually, it's not quite. There's one more aspect to cover off. Let me just go back in from the administrator side of things. Oh, close our little notification. So how would you keep track of this on a more global scale? Because of course we've just looked at where you can find it on one individual student profile. So if we come into our reports menu, there is a report here for agreements. So we'll click on that agreements tab, and this will allow you to see all of your agreements, those that have been signed, and any that might still be awaiting signing. So we can go ahead and run that, and we can see that one is sitting in there. as well as a few others. So those filters will really help just keep a track of any that might still be pending signatures. And obviously it's where you can find all of your previous documents that have safely got all those signatures recorded on them as well. So you could do a bit of a search there if you're looking for a particular student name, and you can export that as a report as well. So if you did want to manipulate the data further, you're able to do that off in your choice of spreadsheet program. But that sort of sums up document signing, particularly in relation to our letters of offer and training plans. And so if I can share my slideshow again, the next topic that we'll be going over and the next sort of new functionality is elective unit selection. So this is already available in the system for your accredited training, but we've now made it available for unaccredited programs as well. So the examples that I go through today, they're going to be in relation to setting this up for an unaccredited program, but you can absolutely apply this to accredited programs that you may want to use this for as well. So just to give a bit of an overview why you might like to use elective unit selection. So it offers some flexibility for your students to pick from a range of available units instead of enrolling into training that has set or fixed elective combinations. So it's really just opening up some flexibility there. And the long and the short of it and how to use it in the system in a little summary. You can toggle this at program instance in the details tab, whether this is a setting that you would like to use if you do want them to have the option to select. You need to toggle that together with populating the fields on how many core and how many elective units a student will need to complete in order to finish the training. As well as that, you'll need to add all of the eligible units into the Units tab, and that's at both program level and program instance level. So that's the setup side of things. With that setup done and with that in place, your students or your administrators, depending on who's processing and putting that enrolment in, they can choose which electives they'd like to do. So again, let's go and see that in practice in the eSkilled system. So let's start at the beginning and think about if we're doing an unaccredited program. We'll need to navigate first to our programs menu item, and you'll need to prepare and put in all the units that will make up that particular program. So I've used a little bit of my imagination here and just put in 3 units for a course that might be about how to pick apples. So those have already been set up in advance. If we go and have a little look at one, you can see that the vet flag is set to no. So this is an unaccredited unit that's been created. The next level and the next step up, we're looking at setting up a program that's going to contain all those units. So again, I've already done that in advance as well. The type here has been set as non-accredited. So again, that's sort of the setup that you need to have in place. This is the first step where you have an additional piece that you need to do. We need to add in the units that will be part of the program. So you can see all of the units have been added in here. To add them, nice and easy, you just click on New. You'll be able to see all of the units in your library, so you can select the ones that should be included. Importantly, you're also flagging whether that is an elective or a core unit. So that's probably where some of the elective and core starts to come into play as well. And then the next step up is doing yourself a program instance. So that again, I've already created just to get through this nice and quickly with our example. And then this at program instance level, in our Details tab is where we can find the toggles for those settings. So if we scroll down a little bit, this is the toggle that we need to have turned on to yes, that we do want to allow our students to have elective unit selection. And together with turning that on, it's very important that we've populated our core units and our elective units. So that's how many of those units does the student need to complete in order for them to be considered complete for that piece of training. So in this example, I've got one core unit and one elective unit. The next step of setup is to go to your Units tab and then add all of the options that student can select from. So this is just like a limited example, but the idea would be that they have to do this first unit. That's the core unit. And then there are two that they can select from in terms of which elective they'd like to do. Do they want to learn about picking green apples or do they want to learn about picking red apples? So just to give you an idea of how you might apply that, there's obviously plenty of other ways you can utilize that too. But that's it in terms of the setup. From here, it sort of gives and presents that choice at the point of enrollment. And so there's sort of two ways that we have enrollments come into the system from eSkilled. And I think a lot of people tend to use the option for an external enrollment form where students are either sent a direct link or it can be embedded on your website for them to self-service their enrollment. So if that is you, I've just taken the sharing link here so that we can see what the enrollment form is going to look like when we do have unit selection turned on. So let's go ahead and have a little look. Hopefully you're familiar with this form. So obviously collecting general student details. We've got some test categories here, address information, and as they work their way down the form, this is where you see the elective unit choices. So it lets them know how many they should be selecting and they can toggle for which one that they would like to enroll into. So nice and easy for them. Just another, I guess, query for them to answer on that enrollment form stage. Now, if that is not how you accept your enrollments and you do have those managed by your administrators and they would manually process those enrollments, they are also presented with a similar choice. Let's go and use an example student, perhaps. I've got one in the system here. So when we add an enrollment, we click onto the Enrollments tab and say, yes, we want to create a new one. And what we'll see is we do get another tab that populates here once I've selected a program and a program instance where we did have the setting turned on for unit selection. So let's go ahead and put the required fields in. So those ones, the group intake, their enrollment date, they can come in as enrolled. I think that's all the required fields. And that's great. Now that I've populated all those selections, you can see we've got our elective unit choices. That will be the next part of the journey as we follow the enrollment wizard. So if we click on continue now, that will move us on to our elective unit choices. And as I said, this is very similar to what your students were looking at on the external enrollment form. So your administrators will see how many elective units they should be assigning to a student, and then they'll be able to pick from any of those that have been made available. So you will just select one of those there. So that's essentially, the functionality that it provides. It does give students that ease of being able to choose what they actually want to do. And it does make it nice and easy so that you don't have to create, particular set programs or program instances to accommodate a different, I guess, sequence of units that you do want to offer. So the unit selection here is a nice flexible way to be able to do that. All right, maybe back to our presentation. So I'll share that over again and we'll pick up on the next, which is the new payment plan rule, where you can send an invoice when a student has finished their unit and they've completed it. So as the title slide indicated, it will automatically issue an invoice to students when they have completed that unit. And you might be thinking, no way, Jose, I want them to pay before they start the unit. I don't want them paying at the end. And that's fair enough. I guess this rule might be more useful in terms of splitting up that payment. So for example, you might have them pay a nominal fee at the beginning of the unit, and then you could follow up with a rule for sending an invoice at unit completion so that the remaining balance is paid at the end of the unit. So just to give you an example of a way that you might apply it, it doesn't necessarily have to be the entire, allocation of fees for that one unit that is all paid at the end of the unit. You might want to split it up. So there are a couple of things just to consider and to be aware of if you're interested in this rule. There is a little bit more setup. So when you use this rule, there is a button with a $sign that you'll see in the payment plan itself. We'll jump into the system and see where that is in just a moment. But that button is where you set up the specifics. So for example, you want to send that invoice when a particular unit, being that HLT-AID 009, has been completed. So that's an additional piece of setup. You do need to go in and specify the specifics of which unit is linked to which rule. There's another limitation, which is that you cannot use this rule as the very first rule in a payment plan. I don't think that is too terrible. I think most people would collect some form of enrollment fee as the first payment, and that would be your first rule. But just keep in mind, you will get an error warning if you were trying to set up a send invoice on unit completion rule as the very first rule. And then if you do use external enrollments, so where students can self-enroll into training, it's just worth noting, and I'm sorry this is a little blurry on the screen grab here. If you've used that rule to invoice after completion of units, it's not going to be able to display a due date for them because we have no idea when they will actually finish that unit. It's not set in stone. So yeah, there is no due date that can be published in relation to that rule. Oh, sorry, I double skipped there. And finally, one more limitation before I show you how it all works in the system. Because these are projected invoices, they are only displayed for administrators when they look at a student profile and in their finance tab to see any pending sort of payments that are related to that student. And the students cannot see those in their student portal because they are projected. So they haven't actually been created yet. They're just sitting there in the background ready to go at that trigger point, which is when the student has successfully completed the unit. So once they successfully complete the unit, it becomes a real invoice and it is issued to the student, and then they are able to view it and obviously pay it. But until that point, it's sort of only visible in concept and it's not going to show for the student in their student portal. So yeah, just a few things to keep in mind if this is something that does interest you and you might like to use it. Let's go and look at how the setup works in the system and how you would go about doing that. Let me close that down. So first, we'll need to start by making a payment plan. And if you're not already familiar with that, you'd need to navigate here to your Finance menu item, and then we'll select the Payment Plans tab from there. And if you're starting with a new payment plan, click on New. You'll need to give it a name and a description, and click on Create so that it's populated into your library of payment plans. I'm just going to go and grab one that I prepared earlier, so it's at the last page. It's this one here, to invoice after completion. And I've set up a few rules under that one. So we've got, oh, actually, you know what? This was the one I was actually playing with. I'm very sorry. So we've got two rules on that one. So there's an upfront enrollment fee of $1,500, and then the second installment, which is using our rule. If I come and edit just so you can see in the pop-up what has been set up. So the type is where you're selecting the trigger and the rule, and I've used the option we're talking about today, which is to invoice after completion of unit. I've nominated that's a $100 fixed fee in this example, and that would be after they've completed the first unit. And if we use that same example I used earlier, that would be the first unit on how to pick apples. I'll just close that one down and revisit that, I guess, caution that I gave you, which is that you do need to use a different rule as the first rule in the payment plan. And that's sort of why I've got an upfront enrollment fee attached on this one. That's for $1,500, again, as a fixed amount. So just a bit of a revision there, really, on how you would set up a payment plan. Now, the next, I guess, setup application is we've created our payment plan, but we need to apply it to our program instance. So let's navigate to programs using our main menu and go to program instances. And we'll use that example from earlier again, that apple picking course. And now we've got that open, we'll use the tabs here to navigate to the Finance tab. Now, I've already prepared this. So we've set up the program fees. I've just set it as a total of $16,000, or $1,600, sorry. So that's the total amount of money that the student would be expected to pay. That matches the total value of my payment plan, and I've applied that here too. So we can click the expand button here to see the details of our payment plan. And this is where you get to see that magical $ button that I mentioned when I was talking through the slides earlier. So this button is very important because this is where we are linking our rule here with the particular unit that it is related to. So if we go ahead and click on the button, it's got a drop-down menu here and we can see all the units in the course. And just for this example, I would like to send this $100 invoice to the student when they finish the first unit. So I'll go ahead and save my change there. And now that I've saved it, we've got another, I guess, column on our data table so that you can see this invoice for $100 that's going to create after Apple One unit has been completed. So that's the additional step that you'll need to go through if you're interested in using this rule when you're setting up the payment plan. Now, you can also make that multiple units. So maybe when the student has finished the first 2 units, that's when you would like that rule to trigger and to send them an invoice. So you can absolutely do that. And, you know, maybe you send them a new fee as they progress through every 3 units, as an example. So you can definitely set it up that way. It doesn't have to be after every single individual unit, particularly if you're doing a long qualification, that might be a bit annoying. Terrific. Now, there's probably one last thing I mentioned just in the considerations, which is that this is not actually created right away as a live invoice. It's only going to be created when the student has completed that unit. So we can view that still against a student profile. Again, I've got one I prepared earlier so I can show you how that would look. let's go and have a look at this student here. When you look at that student's financial tab, this is where you'll see any payments that might be pending or that might be coming up in this example. So they will appear with this yellow color on the background so that you can be aware that it is an invoice after completion of units, and that invoice does not technically exist yet. It hasn't been created. It's basically queued up, ready to go, but it hasn't been triggered yet. This is also the only place you'll be able to view what is sort of queued up for that student, because they're not released to the student until they are actually payable. So just so you're aware, that's how you can, check up on them in the user interface from the administrator point of view. And they will have that yellow color so that you can distinguish them from payments that are, well, this one's overdue or due now because it's in red. And then you'll also have them in just black with the gray background if they are ready to pay but not necessarily due yet. Alrighty, we'll switch back to our slides and touch on our next topic, which is allowing multiple user roles. So that would be one account that has access as a student, as an administrator, or as a trainer. So it can be any combination of these. It might be all three, or it might just be two. But that's sort of the premise of the functionality there. So that instead of having separate login details for each of those account options, they can use the same username password and they can flip access through all those roles. Now, this is a setting that you need to turn on at account level if it's something that you'd be interested in doing. If you do have staff that would also come through and do training as a student and be a student of your training organisation. So that is located in your settings and on the details page. There's a toggle setting for allow a user to be system user and student. So we'll go and visit that shortly so you can see what that looks like. Then there's an additional toggle if it is relating to them being a trainer as well on their people page. So you'll toggle that to show that they are a trainer too. So let's quickly go and show what that would look like in the system. So the first setting that you need to turn on is here in your settings menu. And the first tab you open up is the details tab. So we can just scroll down towards the bottom of the page here. And this is the toggle, allow a user to be a system user and a student. So we've already got that turned on. So you might need to go and check for that setting and enable that on your end. The next setting comes into play when you're creating a person in the system. So if we click on people, when we add a new person, it is a toggle when you've got their system access set to be an administrator. So as soon as we've selected admin in our drop-down box here, we've now got another toggle that's appeared. Does this user also provide training? So we would toggle that to yes if this person is an administrator and needs administration access, and they also provide training and they will need trainer access as well. And then if we have that account setting turned on, that they could also be a student, that is the combination of settings that will allow you to potentially have a user who has all three of those roles. Now I'm just going to go back to our presentation again. And again, I'm sorry that these screen grabs are a little blurry. I didn't realize when I blew them up that they would be quite that bad. But this is essentially what you would see when you log in if you do have those multiple roles. So you'll have on your user profile the option to click a button to log in as that alternative role. So in this screen grab here, we've got login as student. So you would get presented with a little pop-up just to confirm if you're sure that you do want to change roles and log in as the student role now. And when you press OK, that will automatically sort of log you out from the admin position and log you in at the same time to the student view. So there's not any, actual providing of username and password that you need to do. All you're doing is clicking that login as button to change which permission you're currently viewing from. And just to explain, I guess, where you can access your profile, if you are an existing user like me, I'm logged in, we can click that drop down button and you'll be able to click profile there. And essentially, if you did have access, which I do not, to multiple profiles, next to the button here, change profile image, you would have that log in as button available to you there. So nice and easy. If I'm, in here doing some administration work, then decide I want to actually do some study, I can just click the button in theory to change over to my student access. And I think finally for today's webinar, I'll just go over the option to record a main and an alternative email address. So this is good if you want to keep a record of, say, a work and a personal contact point for a person, or if you do have people who happen to have, multiple contact points and email addresses that they would like you to reach them at. Or it might be an example where you have maybe a younger student who would like maybe a parent or guardian to also be included on correspondence about their training. So while the system basically lets you record a main and an alternative email, the additional, I guess, interesting factor here is that you can choose in your account to send emails to either only the main email address, only the alternative email address, or you can opt to send it to both. So there's a bit of flexibility there as to how you'd like to use it. If you would like to change, the default would obviously be we use the main email address that is provided for a student. So if you'd like to change those settings and utilize alternative emails or send to both the main and the alternative email, you'll need to go to your settings, go to the details page, and again, there's some toggles added for those desired options. And I think our next slide. Yeah, just brings up some considerations. So you can sort of use these in combination. If the combination you choose is to use the alternative email address, the system will always try and use the alternative one as the preferred point of contact. But if you don't have an alternative email address recorded for a student, the system will continue to use the main email if there isn't an alternative one populated for them. So that's good in the sense that, you might have one student comes through, they just have a single contact point. So we want the system to use their main email address. But then you might have someone that says, oh, I need to give you my work email address, but I don't really check that, or I don't want my training information to go there. Can you actually send that to my personal email address? So that's the sort of scenario where it can be really useful to opt that the correspondence should actually be sent to the alternative since we have one, and don't preference the main email address. Or you can send it to both, which prevents you having to make any choices there as well. There's probably one thing to keep in mind there, and that's if you are using the external enrolment form, because the external enrolment form will only capture your email address as a main email address. So sort of given that scenario I just discussed, it's a good tool for your ad hoc students that might have trouble receiving emails to a particular email address. They use multiple accounts, or they do just want someone else to be in the loop on any communication regarding their training. So let's quickly go and have a look in the system where those settings are, if you would like to utilize that, and where you can record an alternative email address for a student. So visiting our settings again. Again, the details tab is the first one that's automatically open, so we can just scroll down the page to where we have our various toggles. And these last three are the ones that are relevant to this particular point. Or last two, I should say. So you've got one here, use main and alternative email address for a student, which would mean that all correspondence is sent to both. Or you can use this one, which would be you would to use the alternative email address only. So that would basically prioritize the alternative email address that might be recorded for a student. If there is no alternative email address, it will still use the main one though. So depending on your preferences, you can toggle those as you wish. I'm just going to leave them both off. I think that was how they were, or I just won't update my changes so they can stay as the system was set up. And that's actually a good point. If you do want to turn one on, don't forget to scroll up to the top of the page and click the update button so that you've locked that in. Now, in terms of where you record this against a student profile, if we go and have a look at one, so again, we'll navigate to students and I'll pick up a person that I have in the system. On their details tab, so that first tab that's opened, if we scroll down a little bit, we can see the email address, that's a mandatory field, and we've got something recorded there. And this is where you can find the alternative email address field as well. So that's where you would put in maybe their personal email, since this is a work one as an example. So that's some neat functionality there that might alleviate some trouble, particularly communicating with students that might use multiple email accounts there. Terrific. All right. I think that brings me to basically the end of the presentation today. Let me just share back onto the slides. Yeah, that is it. So I know we went through a lot, but Reg, did we have any questions that came up through the session there, or did anyone want to ask a question at the end? I'll take the radio silence as a bit of a no. um, and that's no problem. Look, if you think of something later, you can always send that through to our support team, and they'll be happy to pick up any questions that might come through after you sit down and digest, or perhaps watch again. All right. So, look, we do really appreciate your time today, and we're interested in your feedback. So, we'll share with you a feedback link. I think that might get shared in the chat. I think if not, we will email it to you after the session. Really interested to know if this was helpful and if you learned something from the presentation today. Also, love feedback if there's any particular topics or areas that you would like to see us do a webinar on or go into more detail on. I'm sure that we would love to have that feedback so that we can make these really relevant to your needs as well. And yeah, based on that, we hope we see you in some future webinars as well, and absolutely do give you feedback so that we can make sure that they are as relevant to you as possible. And if you wanted to jot down those contact points, I'll just leave them on screen for a moment. So if you wanted to follow up with maybe a more specific question, maybe you've got some questions that relate particularly to how you operate and they're not so general for everyone to want to listen to today, go ahead and give us a call or reach out to us on the support email there, and we'll be able to investigate and come up with a solution for you there. But yeah, thank you everyone for attending today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And if you're watching this at a later time, I hope that was still really valuable, and we'd still really appreciate your feedback. So if you do have that feedback link and you're watching this, later in the week, please do still feel free to share your feedback with us too. So look, thank you everybody for coming, and that's the end for today.